So for this homework, we started with a couple of conceptual questions, or a conceptual question about the BO number, which is just a representation of the ratio of the convective to conductive heat transfer. So a lower BO number means that the conductive heat transfer is more important than the convective, and that helps us to find out if lumped analysis is okay. Then we had a problem about spheres of a constant density, constant K value, constant heat capacity, and given alpha, which are being cooled, and we're trying to figure out how long it takes to cool them to a certain temperature, which turns out to be this long, and then also how much heat is released with a certain rate of balls being cooled. Then we had another conceptual question about a wall with insulation on one side and then compared to a wall with convection on both sides. It turns out we can model it, this wall as kind of being like this one, except we would have to have this imaginary wall on the other side, so the heat profile will look something like this, which is like 1/2 of that. Then we had a conceptual question about semi-infinite medium, where we must be interested in just like a thin layer, which comes into this next problem, which we had to use Excel for. So here you can see when we set the H value to 30, there we have convergence down here, but once it gets up to 40, everything here kind of goes wild, and 40 is the actual value of H. So we had to use this assumption here, where we kind of set the surface temperature to be -8, which makes sense. And then we continued down, and then we did the rest of our analysis there, and then we got these values. And then we had a question about a cylinder that's insulated on both sides, and that will just be one-dimensional heat transfer in a radial direction. Then we had an ice block, and we were trying to find out when it will melt. And the melting points will be these corners because they have the largest surface area to volume ratio. Then we found out this is the value of how long it will take to start melting, which is quite some time. Then we also had a question about diffusion of metals in each other, and we can treat this as a semi-infinite medium because it's a really slow process, and it often affects only like the surface level, so we can treat it as being semi-infinite. And then finally we had one question about the diffusion of carbon and steel with a given binary diffusion coefficient, and we just had to find the values of depths at where 40% of the original concentration will remain, and these are those two values.